The crimson nebula stretched like a bleeding moon across the darkness of space. Yunji's damaged spacecraft tumbled slowly, its once bright exterior now scared and broken. Warning lights flashed inside the small vessel, casting an angry red glow on the young researcher's pale face. She was a Kalari, a species known for their advanced technology and complex social structures. Her translucent skin showed intricate patterns of blue and silver that pulsed weakly with each labored breath. The ship's life support systems were failing, creating a deadly countdown that seemed to echo through the empty corridors. Just hours ago, everything had been different. Yunji had been leading a routine research mission, mapping the rare mineral deposits in this remote sector of space. Her team had been the best, young, brilliant, and fearless. But the pirate attack had changed everything in moments. The pirates had struck without warning. Their massive ship had appeared from behind a cluster of asteroids, its weapon systems blazing with deadly precision. Yunji's research vessel had barely managed to launch emergency protocols before being torn apart. Her colleagues, her friends, had not survived the initial assault. Now she was alone. The communication systems flickered weakly. Yunji's trembling fingers tried to send out distress signals, but she knew the truth. In this part of the galaxy, rescue was more a matter of economic calculation than compassion. Her species' standard protocol was clear. If a rescue mission cost more resources than the potential value of the survivor, no help would come. Outside the damaged view screen, asteroids drifted like silent witnesses. Distant stars provided no comfort, their cold light seeming to mock her desperate situation. The ship's artificial gravity was failing, causing small objects to float randomly around the damaged control room. Yunji's breath came in short, ragged gasps. She knew her chances were slim. The oxygen recycling system was down to its last 3%. Radiation levels were climbing, and the hull integrity was compromised in multiple sections. Each passing minute brought her closer to a cold, silent death in the vast emptiness of space. Her communication console suddenly sparked, the last remnants of power creating a small fire that quickly died out. No messages had been received. No rescue was coming. Then, something unexpected happened. A distant signal pinged on the damaged communication array. At first, Yunji thought it was another system failure, but the signal repeated, steady, strong, and deliberate. Someone had received her distress call. More surprising was the origin of the signal. It came from a human exploration vessel, a species considered relatively new to deep space exploration. Most advanced civilizations would have calculated the risk and moved on. Humans were different, but she didn't know why. The signal grew stronger. A voice crackled through the damaged speakers, speaking in careful, measured tones. "Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Jae-sung of the human exploration ship Horizon. We are approaching your location. Hold on. Hold on." Such a simple phrase. But for Yunji, it was the first hope she had felt in hours. Her eyes, large and iridescent, caught a glimpse of movement outside. A massive shape was approaching. The human vessel. Its design was unlike anything in the Kalari technical databases. It moved with a purpose that seemed almost alive. Yunji didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The universe had other plans for her, plans that would challenge everything she knew about survival, compassion, and the strange creatures called humans. Captain Jae-sung studied the holographic display with intense concentration. The damaged alien ship looked like a dying bird caught in an invisible web of space debris. Radiation levels were high. Structural integrity was low. Any normal rescue team would have turned back. But Jae-sung was not like other commanders. "Prepare the emergency boarding team," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. The bridge of the Horizon hummed with activity. Young crew members exchanged worried glances. This rescue mission was anything but standard. Lai Wei, the ship's chief engineer, spoke up. "Captain, the radiation levels near the ship are dangerous. Our protective suits might not hold for more than 30 minutes. His fingers danced across multiple control panels, calculating risks with mathematical precision. Jae-sung turned, a small smile crossing his face. "We're not leaving anyone behind. Not today." The rescue shuttle detached from the horizon with a soft mechanical hum. Asteroid fragments drifted around them like dangerous guardians. Each piece of space rock could puncture their hull in seconds. The pilot, a young woman named Hae-jin, navigated with skills that seemed almost supernatural. Inside the boarding team, tension was high. They wore advanced protective suits that glowed with soft blue energy. Radiation shields hummed around them, creating a thin barrier between life and certain death. Jae-sung carried specialized cutting tools and emergency medical equipment. Approaching contact point, Hae-jin announced. The shuttle's external lights illuminated the damaged alien vessel. Up close, the ship looked worse than their initial scans had suggested. Large sections were torn open. Electrical fires had burned through critical systems. Jae-sung's team began their delicate approach. One wrong move could cause the entire structure to break apart. Their magnetic boots connected with the damaged hull, allowing them to move carefully across the external surface. "Cutting through," Jae-sung said, activating a high-precision laser cutter. The tool sliced through the alien ship's hull like a hot knife through butter. Sparks flew. Metal groaned. For a moment, it seemed like the entire structure might collapse. Then they were inside. The interior of the alien ship was strange. Walls pulsed with a soft, almost living light. Broken technology hung from damaged panels. The air felt thick and heavy, filled with the smell of burned circuits and something else, something alien. "Life signs detected," one of the team members reported. "Weak but present." They moved through the damaged corridors. Gravity was failing, causing small objects to float randomly. Jae-sung's training kicked in. He moved with purpose, checking each section carefully. And then they found her. Eun-jae looked more like a delicate sculpture than a living being. Her translucent skin showed intricate patterns that seemed to pulse weakly. She was barely conscious, trapped in a small medical chamber that had partially protected her during the attack. "We've got her," Jae-sung said into his communication device, preparing for immediate extraction. The rescue was far from easy. The damaged ship could collapse at any moment. Radiation levels were climbing. But Jae-sung and his team worked with a precision that seemed almost magical. As they carried Eun-ji back to their shuttle, no one knew that this moment would change everything. A simple rescue mission was about to become something much more significant, a bridge between two completely different species. The universe watched, silent and waiting. The medical bay of the horizon was unlike anything Eun-jae had ever seen. Soft white lights hummed overhead. Strange machines blinked and beeped with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. She lay on a bed that adjusted automatically to her body's needs, her translucent skin slowly regaining its natural glow. Captain Jae-sung sat nearby, reviewing medical reports on a holographic display. His presence was calm, steady. Eun-ji watched him, trying to understand. In her culture, rescue was a transaction, a calculated risk. Resources were carefully measured against potential gain. But these humans, they had risked everything for a complete stranger from an alien species. A medical robot approached, its movements smooth and precise. It checked her vital signs, its mechanical arms moving with a gentle touch that seemed almost compassionate. Eun-ji flinched at first, then relaxed. The machine was different from the cold, efficient systems of her own people. "How are you feeling?" Jae-sung asked. His voice was soft, but carried a strength that seemed to fill the entire room. Eun-ji struggled to form words. Her translation device worked overtime, converting her native language into something the humans could understand. "Why?" she finally managed to say. The single word carried a weight of confusion and wonder. Jae-sung smiled. It was a small gesture, but it seemed to light up the entire room. "Because it was the right thing to do," he explained simply. The concept was foreign to her. In the vast network of galactic civilizations she knew, no one did anything without a clear benefit. Rescue missions were calculated, Resources were tracked. Every action had a precise mathematical equation behind it. But humans were different. A young crew member brought a tray of food. It looked strange, colorful, steaming, filled with various items that made no sense to Yunji. The crew member, a woman named Hai-Jin, smiled and explained each item, her enthusiasm impossible to miss. "This is rice," she said, pointing to a white substance. "And this is something called kimchi. It's a traditional human food from my home country." She laughed, a sound that seemed to dance through the medical bay. Yunji learned quickly. The humans spoke openly. They shared stories. They laughed about things that made no logical sense. During her recovery, she heard tales of human rescues, stories of people saving strangers with no expectation of reward. A holographic display showed her the details of her rescue. The calculations were mind-boggling. The human ship had risked millions in resources to save a single life from a species they had never met before. The fuel cost alone exceeded any potential scientific or economic gain. "We don't calculate worth in the same way," Jae-sung explained when she asked about it. "A life is valuable. Period." Those words echoed in Yunji's mind. Her own civilization would have left her to die. The nearby alien races had ignored her distress signal. But these humans, these strange, illogical creatures, had come without hesitation. As days passed, Yunji began to heal. Her body recovered, but something else was changing too. Her understanding of the universe was shifting, breaking apart like old ice under warm sunlight. Something fundamental was happening, and neither Yunji nor the humans realized how much this moment would change everything. The universe continued to watch, silent and waiting. The ship's library was a small room filled with wonder. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing images, videos, and stories from human history. Yunji spent hours here, her curious mind working overtime to understand these strange beings who had saved her life. Captain Jae-sung often found her here, surrounded by floating screens of information. Sometimes he would sit quietly, sometimes he would explain things. Today was one of those explanation days. "Look at this," he said, bringing up an image of a small human child pulling another child from a river. "This is a story from Earth about a person saving someone, even when they were young." Yunji studied the image carefully. In her culture, such an act would be considered illogical. The risk to one's own safety seemed unnecessary. "Why would a child do this?" she asked, her large eyes blinking with genuine confusion. Jae-sung's smile was patient. "Because it's the right thing to do," he repeated, a phrase she was starting to hear often. The ship's database was a treasure trove of human stories. Yunji learned about firefighters who ran into burning buildings. She saw videos of people helping strangers after natural disasters. Each story challenged everything she knew about survival and social interaction. One particular video caught her attention. It showed a group of humans rescuing animals, creatures that provided no obvious economic or survival benefit. A dog trapped in a deep hole. A cat stuck in a tree. Humans risking their own comfort and safety for beings that couldn't even communicate with them. "Humans value life," Hai-Jin explained when Yunji asked about it. "All life, not just the useful kind." The concept was revolutionary to Yunji. In her civilization, everything had a precise value. Resources were carefully measured. Actions were calculated with mathematical precision. But humans seemed to operate on something else, something she was struggling to understand. Lai Wei, the ship's engineer, showed her historical records of human exploration. They weren't always perfect, but they were driven by something beyond pure logic. Curiosity, compassion, a desire to understand that seemed to burn brighter than any scientific calculation. "We explore because we want to know," Lai Wei told her, "not just because we need to know." Yunji began to study human emotions. It was complex. Humans laughed when things weren't perfectly logical. They cried for strangers. They took risks for no clear reason. Their social structures seemed chaotic, yet somehow worked. Captain Jae-sung became her primary guide. He would sit with her for hours, explaining human concepts, empathy, kindness, sacrifice, words that in her language had no direct translation. Imagine a universe, Jae-sung said one day, where helping others is more important than personal gain. For Yeonji, it was like learning a new way of seeing the world. Every story, every explanation peeled back another layer of human complexity. These weren't just beings who had saved her life. They were something more. At night, when the ship's lights dimmed and most of the crew slept, Yeonji would continue her research. Her translucent skin would glow softly in the library's dim light, holographic screens dancing around her with stories of human courage. She was beginning to understand. And what she was learning would change everything she knew about life, survival, and connection. The universe watched, silent but somehow more alive. The observation deck was quiet. Stars stretched out like tiny diamonds against the endless black of space. Yeonji stood near the large window, her reflection mixing with the cosmic landscape. Captain Jae-sung approached, his footsteps soft against the metal floor. Something had changed in Yeonji during her weeks on the horizon. Her understanding of connection went beyond anything her species had ever known. In Kalari culture, life was a transaction. Rescue meant debt. Survival meant calculation. But humans were different, and Jae-sung was the most different of all. "I want to propose something," Yeonji said suddenly. Her translation device hummed, converting her complex native language into simple human words. Jae-sung raised an eyebrow. "Go on," he encouraged. In her culture, saving a life created the deepest possible bond. It was more than a rescue. It was a sacred connection that demanded a response. Humans didn't understand this, but Yeonji was determined to show them. "In my world," she began, "when someone saves your life, you become connected. Permanently, completely." Her translucent skin pulsed with a soft blue light, a sign of serious emotion in her species. Hai-jin, who was monitoring systems nearby, listened carefully. The bridge crew knew something important was happening. "I want to marry you," Yeonji said simply. The words hung in the air. Silence filled the observation deck. Stars continued their silent dance outside the window. Jae-sung blinked. This was not something he expected. Marriage proposals were complicated enough between humans, but from an alien species, this was completely new territory. "Marriage is a complex human concept," he said carefully. "It's about love, partnership, understanding." Imji tilted her head. Her large eyes reflected the starlight. "Is that not what I am offering?" she asked. "You saved my life. You showed me a new way of understanding existence. Is that not the truest form of love?" Lai Wei, listening from a nearby console, tried to hide a smile. The human crew found the situation both strange and fascinating. The ship's communication systems suddenly came alive. News of the proposal was spreading through galactic networks. Other alien species would find this bizarre. Humans would find it unexpected. But Yeonji didn't care. "In my culture," she explained, "this is the highest form of gratitude, the deepest possible connection." Her skin flickered with complex light patterns, a Kalari way of showing serious emotion. Jae-sung understood something deeper was happening. This was more than a simple proposal. This was a bridge between two completely different ways of understanding life, connection, and survival. "I need time to understand," he said finally. Yeonji nodded. Her species was patient. She had waited her entire life to understand something beyond pure calculation. She could wait a little longer. The universe watched. Something was changing. Something big was about to happen. Outside the window, stars continued their silent, endless dance. The galactic communication network exploded with the news. A human captain, an alien researcher, a marriage proposal that made no sense to anyone. Screens across hundreds of alien worlds lit up with the strange story. The Zorn Council, a group of ancient alien leaders, held an emergency meeting. Their blue-skinned representatives looked confused and worried. "This is impossible," said Commander Rael, the oldest member of the council, his tentacles twisted with frustration. "Humans are unpredictable. But this is beyond understanding." On another planet, a group of Krill diplomats watched the transmission. They had long considered humans to be a young, primitive species. Now, everything was changing. "Look at how they communicate," one Krill diplomat said. Her voice was a series of clicks and whistles. No calculation, no proper risk assessment, just emotion. The Horizon's communication systems were working overtime. Messages came from everywhere. Some were curious, some were angry, some were simply confused. Captain Jae-sung sat in his quarters, watching the incoming messages. Yeonji stood beside him, her translucent skin showing complex patterns of emotion. "They do not understand," she said softly. Hai-jin entered the room. She carried a communication tablet. "The diplomatic channels are going crazy," she reported. "No one knows how to handle this." On Earth, news networks went wild. Scientists, diplomats, and ordinary people all had an opinion. Some thought it was a joke. Some saw it as a breakthrough in alien relations. Some were just confused. A small research station near Jupiter received a special transmission. A group of alien scientists had been studying human behavior for years. This proposal was like a perfect case study. "Humans act on emotion," one scientist wrote in her report. "They risk everything for connection. This is not weakness. This is a form of strength we have never understood." The Zorn Council continued their heated debate. Some wanted to block all communication with the human ship. Others were fascinated. "They saved a life," one council member argued, "with no expectation of reward. This is not how civilizations normally work." Back on the horizon, life continued. Jae-sung and Yeonji worked together, studied together. They were becoming something new, something that didn't fit into any existing categories. Lai Wei, the ship's engineer, created a special communication filter. It was designed to handle the massive amount of incoming messages about the proposal. "This is bigger than a simple rescue," he told the crew. "This is changing how we understand connections between species." Imji's home planet was shocked. In Kelari culture, such a proposal was unheard of. Rescue was a transaction. Connection was mathematical. But this was something else. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Communication networks buzzed. Screens flickered. Alien leaders argued. Scientists took notes. Ordinary people shared stories. Something was changing. The old rules were breaking down. Humans had done something unexpected again, and nobody knew what would happen next. The stars watched, silent, waiting. The medical bay was quiet. Special equipment hummed softly around Jae-sung and Yeonji. They were trying to understand each other, not just as potential partners, but as two completely different forms of life. Yeonji's body was very different from human biology. Her translucent skin could change colors. Her breathing worked differently. Her heart, if you could call it a heart, beat in a strange rhythm that human medical scanners struggled to understand. "Communication is more than words," Dr. Park explained to the crew. She was the ship's lead medical officer, a woman with decades of experience in xenobiology. Jae-sung watched carefully as special translation devices worked overtime. It wasn't just about speaking the same language. It was about understanding completely different ways of thinking. Yeonji could communicate through skin patterns. Her people used light and color to express complex emotions. Humans used words, facial expressions, body language. Learning to understand each other was like learning an entirely new way of existing. Some days were difficult. Cultural misunderstandings happened every hour. Yeonji would do something that made perfect sense in her culture, but confused the humans completely. Jae-sung would react in a way that seemed strange to her. One morning, Yeonji tried to share food in her traditional way. In Kelari culture, Sharing a special nutritional gel was a deep sign of trust. The human crew looked confused. Some looked slightly disgusted. It's like how humans share a meal, Yunji explained, her translation device working hard. A connection. A moment of understanding. Hai-Jin, always the most open-minded, tried the gel first. Her face showed a mixture of surprise and confusion. It tasted nothing like human food. But she understood the gesture. The ship's crew watched carefully. This was more than a relationship. This was a bridge between two completely different ways of understanding life. Jae-sung learned to read Yunji's skin colors. Blue meant curiosity. Silver suggested deep thought. A mix of green and purple showed complex emotional states that humans had no words for. Yunji learned human emotions. She discovered that humans were walking contradictions. They could be strong and weak, logical and emotional, brave and afraid, all at the same time. Communication technology worked overtime. Special devices translated not just words, but cultural context. Entire teams of linguists and scientists watched their interactions. They are writing a new language, one scientist noted in her report, not just of words, but of understanding. Some challenges were physical. Yunji's body temperature was different. Her atmosphere needs were complex. Special rooms were created just for her to exist comfortably. Other challenges were emotional. Human emotions were messy. They didn't follow the clean mathematical patterns of Kalari communication. Jae-sung could be happy and sad at the same time. He could love and be frustrated in a single moment. Humans are complicated, Yunji told Lai Wei one day. The engineer laughed. It was perhaps the most accurate description of humanity ever spoken. The ship continued its journey. Stars moved outside the windows. Alien worlds passed by. But inside the horizon, something special was happening. Two completely different beings were learning to understand each other. Slowly, carefully, beautifully. The universe watched and waited. The meeting hall was silent. Representatives from 100 different alien species sat watching the transmission from the horizon. This was not a normal diplomatic gathering. This was something entirely new. Captain Jae-sung and Yunji stood together. Their connection had become more than a personal story. It was now a galactic event that was changing how different species understood each other. We are not just a couple, Yunji explained to the gathering. Her translucent skin flickered with complex light patterns. We are a bridge between different ways of understanding life. The Zorn Council members looked uncomfortable. Their traditional diplomatic rules were falling apart. Humans had done something unexpected again. Commander Rail, the oldest member of the Alien Council, spoke first. Explain how this happened, he demanded. His tentacles twisted with frustration. Jae-sung stepped forward. Rescue is more than a calculation, he said simply. It's about understanding, about connection. Diplomatic channels across the galaxy buzzed with activity. Scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens watched the transmission. Something big was happening. A Krill diplomat raised a series of clicking questions. How could two completely different species even communicate? How could they understand each other? The traditional rules of galactic interaction were breaking down. Hai-Jin, who had been part of the original rescue mission, prepared a detailed report. She showed how the rescue had started everything. One moment of human compassion had changed everything. We did not rescue Yunji for a reward, Jae-sung explained. We did it because it was the right thing to do. Those words echoed through the communication networks. Other alien species found this concept difficult to understand. Rescue always had a price, always had a calculated benefit. But humans were different. Lai Wei, the ship's engineer, presented scientific data. He showed how human approach to problem-solving was unique, emotional, connected, not just mathematical. The Kalari Research Network was shocked. Yunji was breaking every rule of her species. Rescue was a transaction. Connection was mathematical. But this was something else. Small research stations across different planets took notes. This was more than a love story. This was a case study in how different species could understand each other. Humanity is teaching us something, one alien scientist wrote in her report. Something about connection, about compassion. The meeting continued. Hours passed. Different species asked questions, tried to understand, tried to break down this new way of thinking. Jae-sung and Eunji answered carefully. They showed how their differences made them stronger, how understanding was more important than being the same. Outside the meeting hall, the universe continued its silent dance. Stars moved, planets turned, but something was changing. The old rules were breaking down. A new understanding was forming. Diplomats argued. Scientists took notes. Ordinary people watched and wondered. Jae-sung looked at Eunji. She looked back. No words were needed. They had created something new, something that didn't fit into any existing category. The universe watched, silent, waiting. Something big was happening. The horizon moved through space like a living thing. Stars danced outside the windows. Inside, something special was happening. Jae-sung and Eunji stood together on the observation deck. Their connection had changed everything. Not just for them, but for entire civilizations. "We are different," Eunji said, her translucent skin showing soft blue patterns of thought. "But different can be good." Years had passed since the rescue. The galaxy had learned something new. Humans were not just another species. They were something more. Diplomatic stations across different worlds had changed. The old rules no longer worked. Compassion was becoming a new currency. Understanding was more important than calculation. Hai-jin, now a senior diplomat, worked on special connection programs. She helped different species learn from each other, learn to see beyond their own small worlds. Lai Wei continued his research. He showed how human emotional intelligence could solve problems that pure logic could not. Scientists from 100 worlds studied his work. The Zorn Council, once angry and confused, now listened. Commander Rail, the oldest member, had become a supporter of this new way of thinking. "Humans taught us something," he would say. "Something important." Eunji's home planet had changed too. Kalari researchers studied human behavior. They learned that connection was more than a mathematical equation. It was about feeling, about understanding. Their child played nearby. Half human, half Kalari. A living example of how different could become beautiful. The universe seemed to smile. Rescue missions changed. Other species began to understand that saving a life was more than a transaction. It was a connection, a moment of pure human compassion. Communication networks evolved. Translation devices became more than just language tools. They became bridges of understanding. "We are not just saving lives," Jae-sung would tell young explorers. "We are creating connections." The horizon continued its journey, a symbol of something new, something powerful. Alien worlds watched. Scientists took notes. Ordinary people shared stories. Eunji looked at Jae-sung. He looked back. No words were needed. They had created something beyond language, beyond species, beyond understanding. Their child played with a toy that changed colors. Blue, silver, green. A mix of two worlds, perfect in its difference. The ship's engines hummed, a soft sound of possibility. Outside, stars continued their silent dance. Planets turned, galaxies moved, but something had changed. Humanity had shown the universe something new, something powerful. Compassion was a language all its own. Understanding had no limits. The universe watched and smiled.